So as always, please visit our community forum for Virtual Agent and NLU. There you'll find a lot of articles. There are going to be a lot of refreshed articles coming now with the Utah release coming soon. You'll be able to there ask questions and also give answers. If you're watching from YouTube and you like what you're seeing, click that like or subscribe button. That way you'll be notified every time these recordings get uploaded to YouTube, which we do for all our academies. You can see we also have a playlist if you ever want to play back some of our classic hits for Conversational Interfaces Academy. So today I have a distinct pleasure of having a new guest speaker, Sarah Dawson, and we're going to be talking today on how to build topics using conversational human design principles. So Sarah, you feel free to introduce yourself and feel free to take it away. And if you want me to control the slide, just tell me next, and I'll control the slides for you.
All right. Sounds awesome. Thank you, Victor. Hello, everyone. I am Sarah Dawson, and I'm a conversational designer here at ServiceNow. I've been at the company for just under 2 years, and I've designed for the ITSM virtual agent that we have, as well as other conversational interfaces across the whole company. Before this, I was on a team that created the first chatbot at GoDaddy. So I'm very familiar with how to build a conversational design practice from the ground up. I actually have a master's in screenwriting, and so that actually kind of led very easily into a job writing for bots after I'd been a content and tech writer for about 10 years prior to that. So I've been doing this for about 5 years. And so the kind of scripting I'm going to talk about today is going to seem kind of simplistic, but I guarantee you there's an actual art to writing for AI and virtual agents. So hopefully some of that gets imparted to you all. And just real quickly is the agenda. Really what I'm going to do is go over some basic conversational design principles first, and then we're going to go into some specific patterns around error handling, asking questions, and acknowledging and confirming with asking the questions. But first I'll go over some overall kind of conversational design guidance. Basically, one of the first principles is that you are designing with both words and structure. Good conversational design principles are obviously rooted in the words themselves, but they're also threaded through the structure of the conversations. So that these types of guidelines that I'm going to go over today, they work because they inform the architecture of the conversational flow. So it's words and structure in harmony the entire time. Second principle, use conversational words when writing a conversation. This is a concept that's actually lost on a lot of people, mostly because we were taught to write in such a formal way throughout school and throughout work. So it's hard to kind of let that structure go. But we encourage the use of contractions, use its, can't, let's. Use natural language and natural interactions. You want the conversation to flow the way a conversation actually flows. So it's ideal to not use robotic language or commands or any kind of technical jargon. You want to simplify as much as you can for the user. So I have a little example here. It's like you're taking a sentence that's like, very robotic. I am sorry, but I'm not able to compute the input that you provided me. Please state the query in a way that I will understand. And you're turning that around into just a simple conversational phrase that's, sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Can you try again? So you can see there's a lot of editing that has to happen to make things less robotic and less formal. Another principle, script out every flow ahead of time. And this can be, no matter how you do conversational design, try to find a way that works for you. Meaning you can use a Word doc, you can script it out in Miro or Figma, you can build a decision tree, you can write it out on Post-its on a whiteboard and rearrange them. But the idea is to find the way that works best for you and start mapping it out. And you also want to think about all the ways that your virtual agent might fall through the cracks. And you want to design with those flaws in mind. So for instance, if you have like limited API capabilities, you need to figure out how to ask questions that will sidestep that limitation and get the information needed from the user to complete the task. You also always want to design with a careful consideration of context, meaning you always want to give your user a clear idea of why they're being asked what they're being asked in a conversational flow and how it fits into the larger task at hand. And anytime you can personalize a conversation or make helpful recommendations throughout a user's journey, the outcome is just going to be more delightful for both parties. And then finally, test, iterate, and repeat. As always, if you can listen to user feedback after you've built out a conversational flow, do. You may think that you've provided a completely transparent path forward to solving a problem, but you never know what your users are going to experience, behind the scenes that you haven't necessarily thought of, and that's okay. Error is great. We want to go and test and figure out where things are falling through the cracks and come back and improve and iterate and make it better. So those are just some basic guidelines. Let's go to the next slide. And we're going to talk about error handling. Error handling is one of the crucial pieces to any kind of virtual agent or chatbot conversation. It occurs when the virtual agent recognizes an error or another unexpected event, and the VA must address the fact that the user isn't getting what they need from the conversational flow. The reason it's super crucial is because it can often set the tone for how an interaction plays out. Error handling it happens regularly. You're always going to run into problems. Your users are always going to kind of throw you for a loop, or you're not going to anticipate things. And so you want to have a really solid strategy in place for how your virtual agent handles errors on the back end. It's an opportunity for the virtual agent to demonstrate empathy and understanding as it's trying to get the user on the right path. And it can showcase multiple pathways to help, meaning that it can showcase its ability to prompt the user to ask questions in a different way. It can offer help articles. It can offer minor troubleshooting, connecting to an agent. Whatever your error handling strategy is, you need to give your user a way out and a way to get help, even if the virtual agent can't get the help it needs. It makes technical issues more understandable, which always makes frustration ease and go away when things go badly. And so there are a couple areas, like in general, where the virtual agent kind of needs a solid error handling strategy. One is input errors. And that's when the user is going to give input that the virtual agent is unable to understand, meaning that the virtual agent either isn't built with the content to accept whatever criteria the user is giving it, or the user says something that's sort of, a little off, and the virtual agent just doesn't understand what it's saying. It's going to happen. System errors are when the virtual agent kind of can't complete a task due to either a problem with the system or some other technical constraint. It could be that the user's wanting to do something within a framework that the system can't handle, or it could be that they're literally, the server's down or something like that. And then there are contextual errors, and that's when the conversation kind of goes off track, either because the user's sort of switching gears and it's unrelated to the context of what the virtual agent was saying in the first place. Like an egregious example of this is like a user's trying to book a plane ticket, and then inexplicably somewhere in the flow is like, I want to order a pizza. And so the virtual agent isn't kind of paying attention to that. So let's take a look at it in action. Next slide. So this is an actual example that I have of error handling. Just some general things. You want to kind of keep the user hopeful. You want to offer help without blocking or telling a user they can't. You want to make sure to guide them without blame, so you soften the blow of the errors that are occurring. You want to use simple and straightforward language, and you always want to give the user a way out or an alternative. So in this scenario, a user is needing to update the credit card info in their account. And so we've got three scenarios. The first one is the before. And in the before section, the virtual agent isn't recognizing the account number. So it's kind of subtly blaming the user, and it's not offering a way out or an alternative. It's saying to contact support at the very end of the flow, but it's not offering to escalate in general. So the second after is a one way of handling this, and it's to prompt the user again to re-enter the account number. You always want to give your users another option. And in this case, the user recognizes that they put in the wrong number, they put in the right number, and the virtual agent is, we're off to the races. It's going to help them update their account. In the third version, the account number, they're putting in the same account number. And so you have to allow for that. They have an invalid account number. It's an account number that doesn't sync with the system. And so it's indeed invalid. And so the virtual agent can't help in this instance. So it's offering to escalate right away. So this is a good little example of just like real simple error handling. And next slide, please. Then the next piece is asking questions, which this is sort of the lifeblood of your virtual agent. It's a foundational pillar of conversational design. Almost without exception, the virtual agent needs to ask a question to kick off the exchange and set the user on the right path. And if the virtual agent is truly going to help, that first question needs to be followed with a series of strategic questions. And that keeps the exchange on track and personalized to the user's needs. Question asking is always important. It's an information gathering exercise, and that's creating the blueprint for the entire conversation. You're gathering everything you need to go forward. It provides structure and focus to help the user stay on track. It humanizes the exchange. Questioning and answering are just organic parts of a conversation. That's how we relate to one another. So we want to make it as human without, telling people it's human, because they know it's a virtual agent. And it's also a way of personalizing the path with the user getting the relevant information they need and for the very specific task that they want to undertake. And so there's an art to asking questions. There's open-ended questions that typically occur at the beginning of a conversation to establish the user's agenda, stuff like, what can I help you with today? Or what sort of technical issue are you experiencing? There are close-ended questions. These are kind of more specific questions that are meant to drill down, so very specific to the pathway, asking details about the exact task. And then there are the follow-up questions, and these are questions that help clarify and shape the narrative. And they can eliminate doubt for both the virtual agent and the user. So with questioning, again, how to handle it. You want to use a thoughtful cadence when asking. You don't want to bombard your user with questions because they'll quickly get frustrated if you're throwing question after question at them. So you want to have, and you don't want to anticipate the answer. You don't want to lead a user towards a specific answer because it can introduce bias and it can inadvertently steer them in the wrong direction. So again, design with active listening built in. This is really crucial to that, to not steering the direction wrong. The virtual agent should ideally strategically use context to ensure that's kind of in lockstep with the user. So it needs to be listening to everything that the virtual agent is saying. And then you always want to try and use acknowledgement and confirmation, which I'll get into in a couple slides from now, to make sure that the user is getting accurate and relevant guidance. So in this before and after scenario, in the first panel, rather than asking strategic troubleshooting questions that can guide the user, the virtual agent is asking them to jump in to a really technical problem-solving task. And you can see I've run out a little real estate there with the virtual agent talking, but it's just telling them to go do this, problem-solving thing, and it's not listening to the fact that they don't understand what to do. But once we, simplify this in the after panel, the virtual agent is using context to take the initiative in troubleshooting here. So it's recognizing that the user's device is using a large amount of data, and it's using strategic questioning to help the user shut down any processes that might be slowing things down. And then the virtual agent, once it's discovered some of that, it offers to further troubleshoot while at the user's side in case any other issues arise. So nice little example of asking questions, the lifeblood of the virtual agent. The next piece is acknowledge and confirm. So in asking questions, you want to kind of practice acknowledgement and confirming. Acknowledging is just using simple words like okay, got it, or all right, or yes, or understood. It's just these simple words that let the user know that the virtual agent is on the same page. And they can work. You should, try to ideally thread your entire flow with acknowledgement words, just to make sure the virtual agent's on the same page. Confirmation is another very key way that the virtual agent can demonstrate that it's on the same page as the user. It eliminates doubt and anxiety, and it's a way of making sure the user agrees with the virtual agent's interpretation of their input. So it can prevent misunderstanding and errors. It gives users a sense of control when they're trying to solve a problem. They can accept or deny whatever the virtual agent is telling them to do. It adds clarity, it gives the user agency to take the right steps, and it establishes trust. There are kind of two ways of using confirmation in virtual agent. There's implicit. Implicit confirmation happens when the virtual agent is confident that it understands the input so that it assumes it can continue with the task at hand. So a good confirmation statement is like, okay, I can help you schedule a meeting today at 1 p.m. Explicit confirmation happens when the virtual agent isn't quite as confident. And so it needs to check with the user before making sure that it's helping them complete the task. So the phrasing in this case would be like, you want this meeting scheduled for today at 1 p.m. Is that right? Question mark. So it's just a matter of, making a gentle assumption because it understands and then asking a question to make sure that it's correct. So next slide. And again, some just general ground rules. You want to use clear language when you're confirming, and you want to use language that mirrors the user's request. Try to use call to action terms that allow a user to accept or cancel request. Again, you always want to give them a way out. Always allow the user the options to change their request before it's confirmed. And if the virtual agent needs to confirm several details, you want to remember to avoid repetition, try to ask the question in a different way. And then if confirmation is needed throughout the flow, you just want to make sure you're using consistency in the way that you're asking questions. And again, no repetition. Acknowledgements should be used frequently. Those okay, got it, gotcha. Those words need to be used as much as you can just to make sure you're on the same page. Confirmation should be used strategically and only after a few turns before it, if clarity can't be reached after a few turns, you want to make sure to escalate immediately. And so in these examples, I'm showing an implicit and explicit type of confirmation. In the first panel, the reason why this is working is because the virtual agent is understanding the request and it's immediately displaying options for the user to order new headphones. And once the user makes their selection, the virtual agent further anticipates the user's need by encouraging them to check the order. The more explicit, the second example, is the user's given a lot of information up front about scheduling a meeting. So the virtual agent has some parsing to do, but it's using the phrases it recognized to mirror the language back to the user to make sure all the details are correct. It doesn't quite catch the name of the user that the user wanted to attend the meeting, but that confirmation comes later in the flow. And it's going to make sure that that person is added to the meeting. So the VA is implicitly confirming the meeting with all the details intact at the very end of that flow. So yeah. Those are the examples.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So with that, we're going to switch over to a live exercise of some of these examples. So I'm going to go into my virtual agent designer, which is here. So the first thing I wanted to cover was how to design the error handling that you saw Sarah mention. And Sarah, you can feel free to jump in to provide any commentary you like. So I'm going to create a new topic. I'm just going to call it, error design test. Click create. So we're just going to create a random flow here. Let's pretend we're asking a user something, question. And we're going to ask them, please enter your account number. Now, we're not going to cover today, but someone did ask, hey, is there a way to make this secure or mask this data? And you can. We do have an input node, or we do have an option to secure the input node. That means basically if someone types in something, it just masks it. But yeah, we're going to ask for account number, and then we're going to check to make sure that account number, whether or not it was accurate or not, right? Now, obviously, your account number checking is going to be much more complex than what I showed today, but the point is just to show you, just how to handle errors. So I'm just going to create some if statements. Again, very generic. I'm just going to declare a variable called error. Just going to be a Boolean, right? Like, hey, is this going to be an error or not? I'm going to say if my inputs, and the input is ask info, which is that prompt I just created. It's the data of the prompt just created. If it's not equals to 1, 2, 3, for example, right, then we're going to set errors to true. Again, obviously your logic is going to be way more complex to this, and we're just going to return va large.error. Okay, just give myself a little comment here. If account number is not 1, 2, 3, return error is true, just for my own sake. Okay. So then we have to account for all the errors, right? Now there are 3 kinds of errors. So we're going to add a decision tree, right? One is, well, what if someone like just enters in blank, right? Say this is blank, right? And then no error, and then error, right? Is blank. Fortunately, this one's not going to happen because this prompt is going to be required. So this won't happen, but we'll just create it as is. I might get rid of it later. So let's look at the error part first. So if it's an error, and since I'm using a scripted variable, then I need to use script for the condition here. If va inputs dot ask info is not blank, and va vars dot error. Again, remember this is Boolean, so if this is true, it's going to go down this branch, this error branch. Then we'll do what Sarah taught us to do. We're going to let them down slowly. The worst thing we want to do is show one of that, you ran into a technical issue. We can't help you anymore. That's no good. So we're going to enter in. We're going to give them folks a choice, right? If it's an error, we're going to say, hey, do you want to retry, or do you want to just go to a live agent, right? So let's just help or retry. And like what Sarah says, we're going to be very human about this. We're going to say, hey, I'm sorry, we're not finding that account number, right? Or maybe you're saying, hey, I actually know who you are, right? Because as a virtual agent, I can tell who you are. And you're, it's not a match or something's wrong. Could you try entering it again, right? Again, rather than just, I will put retry here as an option for live help here, but definitely we wanted to, as Sarah said, let them down slow, right? So if they want to retry, so we have another decision node here. And if we want to retry, we just take them back to the top, right? Let's zoom out a bit. Let's pretend this was retry. Take them back to the top, right? This is retry. And this one, because I'm not scripting anything, this is just conditioned. It's very easy. This is the helper retry. If that is retry, take them back to the top, right? If they say, hey, I retried plenty of times and just take me to a live agent, then you can just say agent, right? And again, this is live help. The good news about live help is we do have a topic block for that, right? So you don't need a script, hey, send them to agent. I can just use a topic block. I think it's called agent transfer to live agent. And then we're done, right? If it's no error, we'll say, so we finished the error part, right? Oh, and by the way, one more thing. Since we're low on time, I'll just combine two exercises in one. Because we're low on time, I'm gonna, after they enter an account number, I'm gonna say, got it, or we understand, right? I can do that in the confirmation message. I can provide a default value confirmation to say, got it. Just one way to just, again, make it conversational. Don't make it so robotic, or don't like start skipping steps and start assuming, the person knows one thing or another. So yeah, so we built out our error block. And then for our no error, again, I have to be, you have to be explicit. You can't just kind of leave everything as a fallback here. So if, or basically return if VA vars is not error. That's what that exclamation point is. Send it down there, no error. And then we tell them, something good. Let's update your account, right? Maybe tell them thanks too, right? And then we're going to actually tell them what we're going to do, right? So that's how you build error handling. That's how you kind of build a conversation with that flow. The is blank, I'm just going to remove, and you'll see why in a moment. Like we don't need it because it's not going to be possible. Let's go ahead and click save. Let's click test, and I may have to switch out my screen share because you may not see the pop-up. So let me do this. Share my desktop.
I think this works better anyway, Victor, because you're seeing all of these pieces in action. So it's all coming together in an entire flow. So this is great.
Yeah. Yeah. And feel free, Sarah, to add anything else on top of what I've done. But hopefully you guys all see the tester on the right-hand side. My variables, you can see them here. The logs can see here. Let's say I enter in, so as you can see, if I don't enter in anything, I can't click send. So the is blank is not going to be an issue here. But let's say I enter in a bad account number, which is like, 125, right? So now it's going to send me, say, hey, I can't find your account number. Can you try again? I could either, retry or go for live help. I'm going to retry, like, my bad, slip of the fingers, whatever, right? Enter your account number, 123, that should be the right one. Obviously, your logic to check the account number is going to be much more complex than mine. And you can see it goes through the no error. It says, thanks, let's update your account. So that's how you build all the principles that Sarah mentioned in Virtual Agent Design. I know I went by pretty quickly, but since this is recorded, again, will be available on YouTube for you to check out and pause where you need to pause and kind of copy and paste all the scripting that I did. Hopefully it wasn't too complex. Of course, it could be very complex if you want it to be. So yeah, we'll pause here I'll kind of leave this on the screen and we'll pause for questions. I saw that a bunch popped up here. Let me check the chat. Okay, so Anonymous asks, do we need to put a disclaimer on the top of Virtual Agent about data privacy or C4 data to avoid putting information there? Yeah, so yes, if you're going to ask, so you don't typically ask, you want to be judicious about asking sensitive data in the virtual agent, and you would want to put a disclaimer up there if you absolutely have a topic that calls for that. And as I mentioned in the chat, we do have the ability to make input secure so that when an admin or agent checks the transcripts, for example, they won't see the account number or the password that the user typed in. It'll be encrypted, in other words. But yeah, a disclaimer is usually on top is good. But if you know that your chatbot isn't going to ask anything too sensitive, then that's up to you. Third question: how to train the natural language and I don't know what PL stands for model without the entity option. Entities are optional. You can do that. We don't cover that here, but again, if you visit our community forum for virtual agent and NLU, we have a lot of articles about natural language understanding. We have a lot of Academy videos on that as well. Is VA vars error a global variable? No, I defined it. So VA vars is how you define a global, within the topic at least, global variable, and then dot, and then error, I just declared that a variable name. You can create VA vars dot anything, really. What version is being used for this demo? That is, this is Tokyo. But everything I did, I don't think I have any, there are no Tokyo specific features, so you could do this in San Diego as well, if not earlier. Let's see here, moving right along. Do you have any problems with users thinking they are speaking with a live agent? Usually not. And the way you do that, and this is another good design principle we've talked we should talk about, is you do want to brand your bot. Like you notice in my tester, I kind of called it VC chat, and I had the ServiceNow logo. But if you give your bot an identity, right? Call it Beth or call it Sarah, right? And give it a photo. People will see, okay, I'm talking to a chat bot. And then when it goes to a live agent, you'll see like a real live agent's name and profile photo, et cetera. So that's a good question. That's a good call out from a design perspective.
Yeah, I can add to that too. Anytime people are going to get confused whether you state from the very beginning, this is a bot you're talking to. So some people will always be confused, but yeah, Victor brings up a great point. When you do your introduction, when you do like a greeting, that's the time when it's great to personalize and brand your bot and give it kind of the personality so people know.
Yep. And then last question. So someone mentioned that PL is Polish. I would check the NLU documentation. We are constantly adding NLU entities release per release. I'm not sure I can't keep track of the languages that we release in Tokyo and then in Utah. So just keep a track of that. Finally, there was a much earlier question about notifications. So it's not possible to do that in promoted topics. But I believe if a user just types notifications, then it does run a background topic. I know it's a bad word, but a background topic to show the user's notifications. But I don't think you can add that as a promoted topic. And then finally, last question: will ServiceNow manage the sensitive data handler, or is that restricted to your own company network? So sensitive data handler is a feature in not only virtual agent, I would say probably in Now Platform overall. So it's restricted within your company's Now tenant or Now platform. I can't speak to the data handling when it goes over your company network traffic, but certainly with data wise, storage and transit wise within the Now platform is secure when you configure it to be. Cool. Well, hey, thank you everyone for joining. A lot of new faces. I hope you can join our next CI Academy in the next, which is in 2 weeks. It's in every 2 weeks, every Tuesday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. And again, this recording will be up hopefully by the end of this week. Just need to trim the beginning and the ends. And if not, yeah, again, sign up for the Academy webinars and visit our community forum. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you all. And everyone have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Victor.